Welcome to Pop Culture Retro, which was recently voted the 15th best podcast by the residents of Golden Years Retirement Community in Boca Raton, Florida. Each show will revisit some of your favorite pop culture memories with insider and outsider perspectives. Now, please help me welcome your hosts, Moosie Drier and Jonathan Rosen.
Hello, and welcome to another edition of Pop Culture Retro. I'm Jonathan Rosen, along with Moosie Drier, and today we are thrilled to welcome someone who's been a star of stage and screen. He's appeared on Broadway in such shows as Bye Bye Birdie and Oliver. He was a regular on the sitcom CPO Sharkey with Don Rickles. He's had guest spots on such classic shows as Murder, She Wrote, Barney Miller, as well as the recent Netflix series Nobody Wants This. And he's one of the stars of the beloved musical Grease. Please help us welcome Barry Pearl. Barry, thanks so much for joining us today.
It's a pleasure. You're welcome, and thank you for having me.
Well, we have a lot to cover, but I want to start by going back with you because I find so much of your early life fascinating. So you're from Pennsylvania originally. So I have a couple of questions here. So first, what age did you start thinking about that you wanted to become an actor? And also, I read that you're from an Orthodox Jewish family. So coming from an observant family myself, I'm curious to what the reaction was to that. Were they supportive?
Very, very. So that was the keystone, I would say, to the success that I've had in the industry, that I had all this wonderful support. And it has always broken my heart when I've had friends and acquaintances who are in the business whose family, the families were not supportive of them, and they pressed on anyway. So no, I was very fortunate in that way. I started out very young. There was always music playing in the house, and I was the only child. My parents were divorced, so I was raised by my mother, my three aunts, and my grandmother, and they always supported me. And I would do things like I'd do stand up. I'd hear jokes and I'd tell them in front of the family, or my late friend Tommy Colson and I would put on shows for the neighborhood, and we'd sing songs a cappella. So there's always the desire to perform, in great part, I think, to seeking the attention. Basically, it comes from that, but it was always positively reinforced. So my mother had enrolled me in a tap dance class when I was a kid, Miriam Mentzer's tap dance class. And at the end of the year, they'd do a review. And because I was the youngest boy in the class, they'd hook me up with the youngest girl. Hook is not the right word, but they'd pair me up with the youngest girl in the class, Maxine Gilman. And they would sort of build the reviews around the two of us. And so that was kind of the bug that bit me. And I've told this particular story often, and this is kind of wild considering, where I land politically, or what we kind of all land with regard to what I'm going to tell you, is that when I got into the first grade, there was I think a fifth or sixth grade production of a minstrel show. Now we're talking in the 50s.
My gosh. Wow. Yeah.
The interlocutor and the whole nine yards, blackface and the whole nine yards. And I saw this live performance. And that also was another bug that bit me. I remember going and asking for autographs of my upperclassmen. So after having done these reviews at the Millersville State Teachers College, they use their auditorium in Lancaster, my mom's friends, I guess, turned her on to this community theater, the Lancaster Little Theater. And so I was cast in a couple of productions for the Lancaster Little Theater, and then had done two shows at Franklin and Marshall College, the Green Room Theater, where Roy Scheider had gone, and I believe the late Treat Williams, well, they're both late now, late Treat Williams as well. Though it is a college that was known for its medical arm, they also had a great drama school. So I did a production of Tall Story and Richard III with Roy Scheider actually playing Richard III. Wow. And finally, there was a production done at the Fulton Opera House, which is now the Fulton Theater, truly one of the oldest theaters in the country, of Dark at the Top of the Stairs, Inge, I think it was William Inge. And there was a fellow from New York who was an aspiring playwright by the name of Chuck Miller, Charles E. Miller. He because he needed to pay the rent, he took a job running lights for this production, and took a liking to my mother and myself. And he said to my mom, one of these days, I want to get your son on Broadway. That was in 1959. 2 years later, the summer of 61, my mother gets a call from Chuck. He's friendly with the secretary of the man who produced Bye Bye Birdie, Edward Padula. So he was a friend of Bob Fagan was the gentleman's name, who was the secretary. And was told that they were looking for a replacement for the young fellow playing Randolph McAfee, this fellow Johnny Borden. Johnny was leaving to do a production of Milk and Honey with Molly Khan. So they had auditions, as they usually do, and they saw hundreds of kids. And Chuck told Bob, I think I got the kid for you. Calls my mom. Next thing you know, I'm on a train to New York. Chuck takes us down to the Lambs Club, which is an area, there was a piano there, and he taught no business like show business. The following day, I'm on the stage of the Schubert Theater on Broadway auditioning for Marge and Gower Champion. Gower had directed Bye Bye Birdie. Sang the song, and they asked me if I had anything else. I didn't. They asked me to sing Happy Birthday. I did. And then I was in rehearsal the following day, that Wednesday. So that began the career in 61 with Birdie. My mom enrolled me in professional children's school, as it was the fall of 61. And that school's designed for kids that are in the business or whose parents are in the business and they travel and go to school through correspondence, which was a bit of an adjustment. You may hear my cat in the background, by the way. Lily's need to get into the office.
Yeah.
So did the last month on Broadway with Bye Bye Birdie, and then the national tour, and then the Las Vegas production. In the Broadway production at the time, of course, the originals were Cheetah Rivera and Dick Van Dyke. But by that point, Cheetah and Dick had left, and Gretchen Weiler and Gene Rayburn had took those roles. Wow. Paul Lynde was still in it. He played my father. Ooh. And Dick Gautier, of course, the original Birdie, Susan Watson, Michael Pollard, who Michael J. Fox gave himself a name after Michael Pollard. He played Hugo, a whole bunch of folks.
What was Paul Lynde like?
Well, as a kid, he didn't take the kids too well. He was fine. I remember very shortly after I'd gotten into the show, at the end of the number, Ed Sullivan, we're standing on a pallet that gets pulled off the stage. We're in the kitchen, and we're on this pallet, and we finish the number. The lights go out, and we get pulled off stage. Well, it was a Wednesday matinee, and there weren't a lot of people in the audience. Kind of elderly ladies that would sit on their hands and not respond. Remember, the lights went out. They started pulling us off. The music was playing, and Paul yells out, "Why don't you all go home?" I couldn't believe my eyes and ears.
So Barry, damn it, Barry Pearl. My first question was, how did Bye Bye Birdie come about, and were Cheetah Rivera and Dick Van Dyke involved? And without even, so you don't need me for this. I mean, you went in on your own.
Need your smiling face, Moosie.
Just wanted to say, do you remember when we first met?
I don't. Was it Jinkies Cafe?
No, it was in an elevator in New York. And
really?
Yeah, and we didn't know each other, and I just like, oh, you're Barry Pearl. Always liked the cut of your jib, and you're just such a good guy. And sat next to you and your wife, a French restaurant too here.
Oh yes. Yeah. Un petit toit.
Yeah. Anyway, you're a good guy, regardless of the fact that you just stole my first.
Thank you so much.
I want to say that on one of the last videos that we did, the interviews, someone commented, "Moosie knows everyone." This is going to do nothing to dispel that.
Right. I'm sorry. I can edit that
No,
out. I won't because I want people to know what a good guy Barry is. Yes. But listen, if you're as old as I am, you're going to meet a lot of people throughout the years eventually.
Certainly. Well, absolutely.
Well, I do want to ask about your next part, which I don't know if it was next, but you were also in the original production of Oliver.
Yes.
Among the cast was Davy Jones and Barry Humphries, who was Dame Edna. So what are your memories of that and those people?
I just get chills thinking about even answering those questions. So after Birdie, we had the tour. We had done the the Las Vegas company with Peter Marshall and Elaine Dunn, and Dick Gautier was part of that. My dear friend Kay Cole, who was Maggie in a chorus line. You remember that character who sang ballet?
Do you remember Kate Cole's slotted to come on here? I've known her for many years.
Well,
Yeah.
she should come on now because she just got a gig, and I'll let her talk to you about. But Kay and I, she's one of my oldest friends. In fact, we lived together as kids. Her mother, my mother, we took an apartment together. This was after we came back from Vegas, I want to say, after that, because we were on the road with Birdie together. So we came back from Vegas, took an apartment in New York. And the November of '62, I had an audition for Oliver, the original production that was going to go pre-Broadway and then into New York. And I had, before the audition, I fell off of my cousin's Shetland pony on her farm outside of Lancaster. I broke my forearm, but I auditioned anyway and didn't get the gig, okay? So time passed. I guess we're now into like December of '62. And I had auditioned for the touring company of Camelot, going out with Arthur Treacher and Lewis Hayward. And I'd actually gotten that gig to play Tom, the little boy who comes on at the end of the play. And all of a sudden there was another call for Oliver. And my mother said to me, you got a gig. What? I mean, she didn't use the word gig at the time, but you got a job. Why would you want to go? Well, because this show's coming back into New York. Why go out on the road on a tour when I could be in another show? And so in New York, oh, okay, fine. And Mom wasn't a stage mom. She was really great about that. It used to embarrass me when I saw other kids' parents dote on them, the helicopter parents. And I always tell my mom, don't ever treat me that way. She was great about it. And so I went and auditioned for a replacement in that company that was coming into New York of Oliver. They were replacing two boys and got the gig. So the day that I was supposed to go down and sign a contract at Camelot, I didn't. I got another job. So at that point in time, Davey hadn't committed the shows. Michael Goodman was playing the role of the Artful Dodger, and a Clive Revel, who just passed actually. He was playing Fagin. Of course, Georgia Brown and Danny Sewell and Bruce Prochnick, who originated the role of Oliver. They were still in it. And then I want to say that Michael Goodman, who was an authentic Cockney, I think his work visa ran out or his voice changed. I remember it as his visa running out, and they replaced him with Davy Jones. So I was actually in the show before Davy, and then we came into New York during a newspaper strike in January '63. Then I was in the show, and I understudied Charlie Bates, George Priolo, who understudied Davy as the Dodger. So whenever Davy was out, George would move into that role, and I'd play Charlie Bates. But yes, Barry Humphries played Mr. Sowerberry, and was understudy to Clive. Funny because years later, now I'm talking out here now. Oh gosh, I don't know, maybe it was I guess it was during his last year as Dame Edna. I went down to see him. To see him at the Amundsen, I think it was, and went backstage and we talked. I mean, I hadn't seen him in decades, and he was so welcoming. It was really, really cool. And how cool that he went off to do Dame Edna. I mean, that was his cottage industry it was just amazing work that he did. So funny. Not only did I eventually wind up playing Harry McAfee, the role that Paul Lynde did, out 30 some odd years later, out here in California, I also wound up, I'd done the Artful Dodger in several summer stock companies, but then I wound up playing Fagin in Santa Barbara and then back at the Fulton Theater. But when I went to do it in Santa Barbara, Clive came up to see me in the show. I called Davey at the time, but he couldn't. He was busy. He was on his farm up there, and because he raised horses and ran horses. But Clive, I was really cool. I brought him up to see the show, and that was an interesting piece, by the way. You know that they were on the Ed Sullivan Show when the Beatles the cast of Oliver. So I could have met the Beatles had I not left the show. I left the show to understudy Barry Gordon in 1,000 Clowns that starred Dane Clark and Margaret O'Brien. And had I stayed in the show, I'd have gotten to meet the Beatles because, again, they were on that show in February '64. But Clive told me that he was asked to do the number "I'd Do Anything," and George, which included Fagin and Nancy and the Dodger and all the kids, and then George just sang "As Long as He Needs Me," which was the 11 o'clock number of that play. And Clive was upset because they didn't have him do like reviewing the situation or Be Back Soon or any of his numbers. So he refused to do the "I'd Do Anything," which were 4 lines basically. Would you rob a shop? Would you risk the drop? Though you come down plop, and your eyes go pop when you come down plop. And he refused to do. They were going to pay him 10 grand. So it'd have been $2,500 a line, but he refused to do it because he didn't get asked to do one of his numbers.
You were cast as lead in The Prince and the Pauper, which can be seen on YouTube, by the way.
Unfortunately.
Walk us through that. How'd that come about? And what was that like for you to, now you're one of the leads?
The Prince and the Pauper, in the summer of '65, I was going to professional children's school, as I mentioned. For the 9th grade, I went over to a rival school that was just being formed, Lincoln Square Academy, and then eventually came back to PCS the following year. But that summer of '65, I got a role as an extra in a series called Coronet Blue, that was which is where I met my best buddy, Kenny Morse. His father was unit production manager. And we kind of looked alike, coloring was kind of the same. We were both Jews. That helped. And the following year, the two of us auditioned as the Prince and the Pauper, which was playing on the stage, starring John Davidson as Miles Hendon, the hero. And they were turning it into a film. So we both auditioned for it and both got the gig. Kenny played the Prince, I played the Pauper. They took us over to Ireland for a month, and we shot in Ireland.
Well, I live in Garbage Court. It's not a very pretty place. We have fun there. Why, there'd be Punch and Judy shows and plays. Plays wherein all the players do shout and fight till all of them are killed.
You ready for who was in this? John Spencer. John Spencer, well, he's no longer with us either. He was on West Wing. He played the chief of staff. And he was in The Verdict, and he'd done all kinds of work. Well, Prince of the Pauper was well before that. And Johnny was also the commercial king when we were kids. We went to school together also. And he was one of those people when I first moved to New York who I recognized and I was a big fan of, because he was in all these toy commercials, So. But that's how Prince of the Pauper came about. And again, it was Storybook Productions, directed by, who was the director? I forget his name. But he went on to do like The Omen.
Oh, wow.
Do something with The Omen. Wait, yeah. Or no, Amityville Horror. It was Amityville Horror.
It was Amityville Horror,
Elliot Geisinger.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Elliot Geisinger. So everything kind of weaves together, this tapestry, the people that you meet and you re-meet. And that's the cool thing about the industry, one of the cool things about the industry.
I have to ask about CPO Sharkey, which starred Don Rickles. We've had on Peter Isaacson a couple of times. He watches, so hello, Peter. So what can you tell us about working on that series and with Rickles? What was he like?
Yeah, first of all, Pete and I are very dear friends. I adore him.
Good guy.
Yeah, very good guy. So I had contended that I would never come out to California from New York unless I had a job. I just was never going to do that. A lot of people did, and then it's all on spec, and it's a roll of the dice. And I was working a lot in New York. And I was actually doing Let My People Come, which was a poor man's O Calcutta, down at the Village Gate. And I auditioned for this pilot called Best Friends that was written by Alan Sachs, who created Welcome Back, Kotter. And he wrote this. He actually produced this pilot, and I auditioned for the pilot. It was being directed by Jerry Paris, the late Jerry Paris, who directed every episode of Happy Days. And at first, I didn't get the gig, and it was to play the role of Murray. He was a Jewish gypsy, and the week before we were to find out whether we got the job or not, gypsy came into my life in all kinds of strange ways. I would meet a gypsy on the bus going downtown. It turned out that the guy who sold the souvenir programs that let my people come was a Jewish gypsy, and those kinds of things. And I felt, well, these are great signs, man. I'm going to get this job. Comes, I don't get the gig. They don't hire me. A week later, 2:00 in the afternoon, I'm about to watch the match game with Gene Rayburn, actually. The phone rings, and it's my agent saying, they're firing the guy they hired. They need for you to get on the next plane and get out to California. Now, I'm going to put you on hold so we could do a 3-way call. So hang on. So they put me on hold, and the music that was playing on the phone was a song called I'm a Gypsy Rover.
Wow.
Now, that's an Irish song, but how bizarre is that? Well, I get on the next plane, I come out, we do the pilot. Pilot doesn't sell. But Jerry Paris said to me, look, you made a lot of inroads here. You met some casting directors who feel as I do, you'll work. Come out. You can even stay with me and my family up in the Palisades till you get on your feet. I went, wow, what an offer. So I left the show that I was making a lot of money in at the time, and I packed up lock, stock, and barrel, and I came out to California and moved in with Jerry Paris and his family. Within a week, my first audition was to replace Jeffrey Kramer, who, by the way, Jeffrey Kramer was he was the deputy in Jaws, the one that throws up on the beach, Roy Scheider's deputy.
Oh, sure.
Okay. He also then produced Ally McBeal with David Kelly and other things like that. He became a producer. He had done the pilot, the role of Pellegrini, the Italian recruit. So you had Peter was the Swedish guy, you had Tommy Rubin, the Jewish guy, the Polish guy, the late David Landsberg's the Jewish guy, Jeff, God, what's Jeff's last name? The black guy, and me, the Italian guy. Mignoni was the name of my character. So they fired, or I think maybe Jeffrey left, and I auditioned for it and got the series. So I think I did 13 episodes, 12 or 13 episodes. But in the course of the time there, I became rather despondent because they weren't writing for us. Everything was going to Don, and Don was, going nuts with all the lines and such, and I just wasn't happy. I mean, I was on top of the world. I get a series, first job out of the gate, first audition out of the gate, and I became unhappy. Well, on my birthday that year, which was 76, so that was 77, my birthday in 77, I get a call because we didn't know whether we were going to be picked up for a second season or not. And I get a call from my agent saying, the show's being picked up, but they're not picking up your contract. And I was devastated. I go running down to Jerry Paris. Oh my God, Jerry, what am I going to do? He goes, look, this happens. When I was doing The Untouchables as a kid, they wrote me out. But the next thing you know, I get the Dick Van Dyke Show where I played Jerry the dentist, and that led to my directing career because Sheldon Leonard let him direct, and then the rest is history for him. Like I said, he directed every episode of Happy Days and a lot of stuff in between. I said, yeah, but the light at the end of the tunnel looks like a truck coming at you in the moment. Well, had I not been picked up, or had I been picked up, I would never have been able to do Grease, which is why the three of us are here right now talking about it. But Sharkey Don and I remained friends afterwards, and we all did. It was an amazing gig. I mean, the people that the guest stars, we were right across the hall from Carson. And that time when Carson came into our studio after Don had broken his cigarette box, we were all there at the time. We just come off stage. We were upstage behind the flat, which is the door to Sharkey's office. And that's where Carson came. He didn't come through that door. He came through downstage left in the wing there, basically, if you're looking at it like a stage. The live audience, of course. And so we were all there. We only wished we had been on stage at the time. But, I mean, the king graced us at that point in time. So my Sharkey.
Thanks again, Barry. That was my next question. Was about were you there when Carson made his visit?
Is this looking like I'm replacing Moosie, Jonathan?
Yeah, that's okay. These things happen, in the words of Jerry Paris.
Yeah,
Yes, yes.
and forgive me, my allergies are kicking up, so I got this, as we talked about before, Moosie, so you'll excuse me.
Stupid, man, you're not gonna have to land. It's no good. This is now your land. You take. Oh, horse and cigarette box.
On this desk.
You brought that up from New York City?
I brought this from New York. What on earth?
It happened last night.
Who?
Don Rickles.
Be right back. Come on. No, but I'm sorry about the box.
Well, so am I.
I will come up with something. Well, I hope so.
I wanted to ask you about Grease. So you had been in the Broadway production prior to that, right? You in Grease?
No, I wasn't. I was on the national tour.
On the national
tour, yeah. I did the first national tour. I replaced Michael Lembeck, who was playing Sonny.
Okay.
And yeah. And
Michael Lembeck, he was from, is he Captain Cool and the Kongs?
Captain Cool. I've been trying to reach out to Michael Lembeck. Yes.
Captain Cool and the Kongs, which was the Croft.
Yeah, he did some other stuff too.
He's become a very successful director.
When you auditioned for Grease, the film, was pretty much everyone who was doing it on stage went to audition for the film, or what was that process like?
Okay, so the summer of '72, it was the summer before my senior year at Carnegie Mellon, where I went to college. Mm-hmm. And I auditioned for, along with my girlfriend at the time, for the company, the Chicago Free Street Theater. It's a company that was an outgrowth of the Illinois Arts Council, led by Patrick Henry III, a direct descendant, by the way, of Patrick Henry. And we would bring live theater free into all kinds of neighborhoods up and down Illinois. Affluent neighborhoods, squalid neighborhoods that had never seen live theater before. We performed on a truck, a huge semi that would fold a showmobile, and we would erect the stage with the platforms, and we were crew and cast, and then we do these original musicals that we created. So I met a buddy at the time, and then they took us to Europe that fall of 72. We were sponsored by the Belgrade International Theater Festival in Yugoslavia, and Pierre Cardin in France, at Paris, to perform in his theater, the Espace Cardin. Then we did a week in Brussels, and Carnegie gave me credit for that stint, for that first semester. And I met a pal by the name of John Lansing. He was one of the actors, and John went on in later years to write and produce Walker, Texas Ranger, and he's now a very successful novelist. He has a character, kind of Grisham-esque or Ludlum-esque stories that he writes. I wish I could remember the name of his lead character, Bertoloni, I think it is. Forgive me for not remembering. But anyhow, when I went back to college in January of '73, and some of my college mates were transfer students from out here in California who were friends with Michael Lembeck, and they kept telling me how much I reminded them of Lembeck. We did the same shows, the same roles in the same shows, this and that. So Grease, the tour, had come through Pittsburgh, and by this point, my friend John Lansing was the understudy for Zuko and Teen Angel and Johnny Casino. So when he came into Pittsburgh, we got in touch with each other, and I don't know how we did that because this was way before cell phones. But I remember myself on a payphone talking to him. So he invited me down to see the show, and I go down to see Grease, and out comes Lembeck, and he comes out backwards first of all, and then when he turns around, it was like watching myself. He did remind me of me, and I can understand why people thought that. I thought, my God, I can do this role. So the next day, I get on the phone with my agent. I told them the story. I said, look, if there are any auditions coming up, because they're going to be doing more companies of this, with placements, whatever. Well, sure enough, some time after that, they had general auditions. I flew into New York, and I auditioned by singing Blue Suede Shoes. And I first went to the drugstore and bought some Murray's pomade, which was like wax, and I put it in my hair. And instead of just going on the stage at the Royale Theater and singing the song, I brought a chair with me and my two shoes that I put down behind the chair. And when the song started, I picked up the one shoe, one for the money, the other shoe, two for the show, three to get ready. Now go, cat, go. And I jumped over the chair, sat down on the chair. And through the course of the song, I was putting on my shoes. And then at the end, I got up and I did a bell kick. And boom, that was my audition. So
That's awesome.
So a couple of weeks later, I get a phone call. Michael Lembeck has broken his ankle at the end of Act 1, jumping off a bench. They want me to come back in for a callback to replace him while he's out. Flew back in. Oh, by the way, that first time I couldn't get the wax out of my hair. That was a whole other mess. A side story I don't have to go into now, but it was a mess. But finally got it out. And so I went back in. Little did I know that what the people did, the cast, they would mix that Murray's pomade with Groom and Clean, which is water soluble, and that's the way they put it in, and it came out in the shower. So I go back and I get that gig, but I tell them I have 2 weeks of college to finish, because they wanted me to come up to Toronto right away to actually understudy the understudy who had gone on from Michael. And I couldn't come right away. So they said, well, you'll come in 2 weeks up to Detroit. We'll be in Detroit at that point in time. So I flew up to Detroit. They flew me up to Detroit, and I understudied Tommy Gerard, who was playing Sonny. But I was working really hard on the role. And in that company, Mary Lou Henner was playing Marty. Jeff Conaway, may he rest in peace, was playing Zuko. He was a brilliant Zuko, by the way. Jerry Zaks was playing Kinnicky. Now, Jerry went on to become a very successful Broadway director. Travolta was playing Duty at the time. And I worked really hard backstage for the 3 weeks that I wound up being there. And towards the end, I go to Jerry Zaks and I said, Jerry, I'd like to get on stage to do this role. Can you pretend to be sick so that Tommy Gerard, the guy that's playing Sonny now, would move into Kinnicky, and then I'd be able to do so. He said, well, let me ask the stage managers. And I figured, oh, well, that's not going to happen. And sure enough, he asked them. They said no. Well, about a day or so later, May 19th of 1973, I'm in my hotel room, and I get a call from the stage manager, Hal Halverson, saying, Jerry Zaks is sick. You're going on today as Sonny. Now, whether they had that planned, who knows, because Michael was coming back like the next day. So I got to step on the stage at the Fisher Theater in Detroit playing Sonny in Grease. 4 years to the day later, I landed the role of Duty in the film. May 19th of 1977. Now, that gig, we got that. We auditioned. I auditioned with the same tune, doing the same thing. And then they had us read different roles, and they had me read Duty, and I'm not a Duty. If you know the stage play, I'm far in the movie. The role of Putsy, played by Kelly Ward, who was up behind you, the blonde-haired guy behind you, Jonathan. He was Putsy. That was the Duty character. The role that I played as Duty was really the Sonny character. And Michael Tucci, whose hand you can just see behind your jacket there, who played Sonny, was really playing the role of Roger from the play. So they mixed the whole thing up a little bit. In the stage play of Grease, Cha-Cha, which was played by the darling, dear, late Annette Charles, that hot Latina. In the stage play, she wasn't a hot Latina. She was a girl of size, not very good looking, with Dolly Madison curls. And that was the joke, because when Rizzo and Kinnicky have the fight in the play, they went together, though they were a couple. When they had the fight, Rizzo asked Zuko to the dance, and Kinnicky says, well, that's okay, I got a hot date from across town I'm going to bring to the dance. Well, he shows up with this not so hot date, and that was the joke. But in the film, they changed it up. So keeping the play in mind, the last thing we did to audition for the film was they lined all the guys up on one side of the room, this big rehearsal room, and all the girls up on the other side. And the task was that a guy from the side is to come to the center with the girl from the other side coming to the center, and you had to dance with her and woo her off the stage, woo her out of the room. So I'm thinking to myself, you know what I'm going to do? And by the way, in the play, Sonny has an encounter with Cha-Cha at the very end of the dance. Sonny in the play does not dance in the dance. He sits off to the side and gets drunk. Because Jim Borelli wasn't a great dancer, nor was he a really fabulous singer. So Sonny in the play doesn't have a song, nor does he dance. And so at the end of that number, the end of the dance contest that then bleeds into what was the Burger Palace, but in the film was the Fosse Palace, he staggers up the stairs where he encounters Cha-Cha, and he comes up actually under her dress, or he falls back down, and oh my God, and he gets away from her. So I'm thinking to myself at this audition, I'm going to pretend to be drunk, and I'm hoping against hope that the last girl, and there were 2 left at this point in time, the last girl, who was kind of a little oversized and not as good looking as the girls before her, let her hang back, because what I'm going to do, and what I did do, was I got myself a styrofoam cup and I staggered out to the middle of the room. She comes out, and I take the styrofoam cup and I put it in the cuff of my jeans, and it stayed there. And I took her around the waist and I started to embrace her for a dance, and I moved my hand down to her tush. Okay. At which point the actress takes my hand, she goes around her backside, takes my hand and puts it around onto my tush. And I start caressing my tush like I'm thinking it's her tush. I think that was
beautiful.
Kind of sealed the deal, if you will.
Yeah, that's a great moment. That's brilliant.
Cool.
So you get to the film, and I mean, so Travolta's already a star at this point. Olivia Newton-John, a huge recording artist, and then you there's these legends in the film too, like Eve Arden and Frankie Avalon, Sid Caesar. Barry, did you realize that this was going to be as big of a hit? Big isn't even the right word. It was massive of a hit that it was. Did you have any idea?
The way that I've always answered such a question is that no one has a crystal ball.
Yeah.
To predict that. Now, Grease, of course, was a huge success on Broadway. It was, at one point, it was the longest running show in Broadway theater history. It was surpassed since, by Chorus Line, Fiddler. We took it away from one of them. I think we took it away from Fiddler, then Chorus Line, then Cats, and I think Phantom is 35 years. It will never be surpassed. And 36 now, 36 to 37 even. And we didn't have a clue. We knew that we had something good, and we knew that we were all good at what we did, and we had these icons, as you mentioned, Eve and Dodie and Alice and Sid, amazing. And all that you have to hope for is that the editor puts it all together properly. It was directed well. It was produced well. Alan Carr was a real P.T. Barnum of sorts. He was a really real entrepreneur. And you just kind of, threw the dice, and it turned out to be. Now, originally it wasn't. It wasn't an artistic success as much as it was a commercial success, because they had foreign distribution, and even to this day they've got rentals and such. So it became more of a hit through the years, from generation to generation. It spoke to all these kids from generation to generation. And the music, the dance, the cameras love John. They love Olivia. And it was kind of a perfect storm in a way. All the elements came together. The dance, Pat Birch's very simple choreography. When I say simple, she took those of us that are non-dancers and made us look like dancers, and took the core of dancers, the 10 guys and 10 gals who support us all along the way in the film. They were just brilliant, unsung heroes for the most part. They were real dancers, and she put them through their paces. So you had just all these wonderful elements, and the music, and you have John Ferrara writing, You're the One That I Want, and Hopelessly Devoted, Sandy, which were tunes that were not in the play, but they did appear in the film. So you had all these incredible elements that came together, and it became what it did. But we didn't.
Yeah, you can't. There's no crystal ball for. I'm sure. Yeah. Maybe when they were shooting Heaven's Gate and Waterworld, people are thinking, "Wow, this is going to make all the money. Yeah, this is going to be huge."
Yeah.
Everybody was great in Grease. Everybody, and I worked with the late Dennis Stewart.
Dennis Stewart,
He was Craterface, right?
Craterface, yes.
I remember working with him. He was who he was in Grease. And then when I was working with him, he was a bad guy. He was a heavy, sweetest human. Nicest guy. And I just thought, oh my God. And he was telling stories like like what a once in a lifetime opportunity to be in that film.
Really?
I mean, it's perfectly cast.
Yeah, it's become a legacy.
Did you get to interact at all with like the oldest, like Sid Caesar or Eve Arden? Did you get to interact with them much off screen?
Well, it's interesting because I regret not hanging more with Sid, because Sid and I knew each other from 1970. Now, going back to Oliver days, the Kansas City production was at the time the artistic director of the Kansas City Starlight Theater was a fellow named Glenn Jordan, and in the fourth year, so again we'd done 3 productions, he said, Barry, look, you're too old to play the Dodger anymore. Why don't you come and assistant direct? And what wound up to be co-directing, because what I basically did was direct all the kids in all the scenes that Fagin did. Who was Fagin? Sid. They hired Sid to play Fagin. So I got to direct Sid and I was there for 2 weeks, at which point, opening night, I'm done. Sid hired me on and sent me to Indianapolis, where the show was going to be done there, to prep the new group of kids. So we became buddies, and this was at a time where Sid was just straightening out. He was off the drugs and the alcohol, but he wasn't real crazy about the way Dickens had written Fagin. So thinking that Dickens was an anti-Semite, which I believe history says that he was, he didn't want to conform. But then why even take the role of, it's a Shylock character, Fagin. So it wasn't the greatest of productions, but it was an amazing experience, and I got to hang with Sid. So now, fade out, fade in, we're doing Grease together. And he pretty much kind of kept to himself. We hung a little bit, but it didn't feel like it did back in 1970. Now we're 7 years later. We then wound up being in the same TV film, movie of the week, The Munster's Revenge. We didn't work together, but we got to be in the same. Now that was kind of a cool thing, because I got to work with Fred Gwynne and Yvonne DiCarlo and Al Lewis, and Bob Edmondson, who played Phantom of the Opera. That was a new character they brought. Of course, it was a new Marilyn. I was one of Marilyn's boyfriends. You know how she would always bring a boyfriend home and they'd get spooked. So I was one of her boyfriends, and it was a new. Butch Patrick, of course, was way too old to play the role of Eddie anymore.
Yeah.
But so again, with these webs that we weave, we keep meeting each other and going off and coming back, and
I see what you did there. These webs when you're talking about the monsters. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
So there's a lot written about the Rydell Gym dance scene, that there was no air in there. It was extremely hot, and maybe people were passing out. This is true?
Yes, it's true. It was next to a meat processing plant. So whenever they'd open the windows, you get this pork smell wafting in. So it was very uncomfortable, very hot. Michael Tucci passed out and had to be taken to the hospital, actually. Wow. Yeah, so it was a little brutal. Yeah. I mean, and so all that's true. All that's true. There isn't much said about the film that isn't, except, we keep being asked questions, was there anything sordid that went on? And there really wasn't. I mean, we all sort of behaved ourselves. It was a big party. I mean, every once in a while, Jeff Conaway's Honey Wagon would rock back and forth, but
he was method with the hickey.
Yeah, exactly. Giving Stockard an actual hickey. We all got along, and it was really a labor of love, truly a labor of love.
That's great to hear. That's great to hear.
And also, in the play, Duty has his own musical number, those Magic Changes.
Changes.
Was there a point that was going to be in the movie, or no?
The song is in the film,
right? But not for you singing.
But nobody sang it. No, nobody had songs. Frankie, of course, the Teen Angel, but nobody had there's some. And in fact, not only is Magic Changes, but Rock and Roll Party Queen is in there. They're played during the dance in the background. And Mooning, of course, is in there too. And that was a song that Roger sang, that Sonny in our film would have sung,
Right.
but they didn't. They wanted to keep the focus on John and Olivia.
Mhm.
And in fact, Grease Lightning was Kenicki's. That's Kenicki's song.
Right. I was going to ask you about this.
Yeah.
So was kind of, because everything I read, Conway was not happy whatsoever.
He was not happy. No, he wasn't happy. No, took it in stride around us, but we know that he was not happy.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And it was interesting because, again, Travolta was duty to his Zuko on the road. They were both handled by Bob Lamond, as was Kelly, who played Putsy, who was an amazing manager. He handled Jamie Donnelly, Treat Williams, Richard Gere, all those types of actors at the time.
So was there any point after it comes out that you had been asked to participate in Grease too?
As a matter of fact, about 3 or 4 weeks in, maybe it was 3 weeks, because it was after 3 weeks that they brought all of us together to look at a bunch of dailies. And we were just thrilled at what we saw. And Alan Carr, the late Alan Carr, may he rest, we were outdoors. I remember, I don't know what we were shooting exactly, but I remember it was one of those outdoor cafeteria type looking constructs. And it was Alan and Jeff, Michael, Kelly, and myself. He brought us all aside and said, listen, Paramount is loving what they see, and we want to do a sequel. And the original idea for the sequel is set up at the end of the first film by the three of us. If you recall the carnival scene, when the carnival scene starts,
Yeah.
remember that opening dialogue?
Yes.
Failed phys ed. Did I even take phys ed? Putsy says. And then we go to the pie throwing contest with Sid. And Sid says, all you have to do is, come back to summer school. That was going to be the title for the film, Summer School. It was going to follow us back to school. And it was all going to happen. And then one thing led to the next. Bronte Woodard, who'd written the screenplay, had passed away. And then they couldn't strike a deal with John and Olivia. Maybe money wasn't right. Who knows? Maybe, you can't go home kind of thing.
Going back to when Grease exploded. So what did your life now look like? Did it change? You go to the market. It's a different life for you. You're recognized, right, in the market or wherever. How did your life change after Grease came out?
That was my dream, Moosie.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, no big deal. More so today than then. And people often come and say, you look familiar. And then my wife will always say he was in Grease, and I say, oh yeah, because I got the beard and I got the gray hair and I got the glasses. Oh, now I look like I did, but it not so much. In fact, we were worried that we would fade into the background, kind of like the ensemble did with Saturday Night Fever. Although Donna Pescow still emerged, and Barry Miller had a career, and there was who was not Danny Oterio. There was one other fellow from the ensemble.
Paul Pape was part of that cast too. He was one of Travolta's buddies.
Yeah. So a little bit, and we were afraid that was going to happen. It didn't so much. And thank goodness for the autograph signing conventions, because the fans are who keep us relevant, basically. And so that's always a joy to meet the fans, and they're over the moon when they come to meet us. And gosh, we never knew.
You're one of the T-birds.
That
surprises me. This surprises me because Grease is the kind of film. It surprises me that you weren't like instantly just, oh my gosh, everywhere you went.
No,
because Grease was the kind of film that people would see more than once.
Yeah.
It was, not quite Rocky Horror, and then they show up time after time with the props and the rice and all that. But I think it wasn't just my circle of friends who was going to see. We saw Grease over and over and over again. Of course, you pay for the one movie in the multiplex and you just keep sneaking into Grease. Sorry about that. I owe you 40 cents.
I would spend the whole day in a multiplex.
I recognize every single one of you from the film. So that surprises me.
Sure. Yeah. Again, more so today because of the autograph signing shows. And I've been to Australia a couple of times. the Chiller convention. We only been to Chiller once, actually. It's a tough convention to get into. And we did do the Hollywood show. We've been taking we've done drive-ins. That's kind of fun too.
Oh, wow.
They're over the moon for us. They really,
Yeah.
and it wasn't so much in our face. Well, certainly out here in California, you walk down the street and you're seeing celebrities. So when we're in smaller cities doing these conventions, they really come out in droves to
Yeah.
to-
Well,
it's just-
your film has a 1-2 punch to it. It was good, and I'm not just saying that. Everyone in it was very, very good, and the film was very good. But also, don't we all like to go back to a simpler time? We love to reflect. That's what classic rock music and all, older. We love to go back to a time that has an association that wasn't proper taxes and whatever we're swimming in now. It's like, back in Greece, and then So of course, the conventions, people want to line up and meet you.
We were just talking about this the other day. Some friends of mine that if you were to how does it go? Will we be remembered in years and years to come? I mean, you'd be surprised. To the old joke. Wait a minute, you mean Paul McCartney was in a rock band before Wings?
Yeah.
Kind of thing. That we will fade away, but maybe not so much with media the way it is these days, and with technology and the way that they are preserving films these days on digits, that nothing degrades as celluloid does, as magnetic tape does. So in that way, things look pristine and brand new. Certainly the old classics have been restored. I have a friend that does that kind of thing. But will we, in fact, even these classics, maybe Grease falls into that Gone with the Wind, Wizard of Oz, Singing in the Rain, Meet Me in St. Louis, et cetera, a group of pieces of art that remain relevant. But so many of us and so much art will just fade into the background because that's just the way it is. Again, maybe less so because of the way we're able to preserve these days.
There was one point that I remember that Olivia Newton-John and Didi Khan had been talking about, that people were actually working on a Grease 3 with following the cast in present day. Did you remember any of that happening? You heard that?
Didi had Sherry Lansing's ear, and Sherry was a mucky muck at Paramount, I think it was, and Didi had gone to all of us asking us to write our story for what they call the Bible, the treatment, if you will. And we all did that. And it got pretty close. I remember Michael wrote that he and Marty got together and opened up a pizza parlor, had kids. Zuko, at one point, well, that's down the line. Frenchie and Kinnicky hooked up, and I married what I contributed to is I married Priscilla Lorna from the second film, and we had children. And they hired Zayden and Marin at one point in time were hired on to do this.
Wow. They
hired teams of writers, and one team wrote that because we didn't figure we'd get John involved, that he was a race car driver and he had gotten killed in a car accident, in a racing accident. So he was no longer with us. And I don't know what happened with Olivia's character. I don't recall what was part of that.
Well,
but
you've seen that fan theory that at the end of the movie that
Olivia
that they were dead anyway, going up to heaven.
No, so, no, that doesn't hold water. No, you talked to Randall Fleischer about that.
Yeah.
I was going to ask, around 10 years ago, you participated in Grease Live on TV. How was that experience to get to revisit it now at this age now?
It was wonderful. Really wonderful. Tommy Kail was our director. And I remember going to the table read, and the script is like this thick. I've got it. I can show you. It's huge.
Yeah.
And when it was all over, I broke down in tears.
Wow.
Because it was just brought me so back and just the cast and the way they read, I just knew this was going to be big, and it was big. Of all of those that they have done like that, it was at the time the most successful because it was the first one that had a live audience, first of all.
Yeah.
And you know, Grease is what it was, and they didn't try to alter it. They tried to do it as much as they actually wed the film with the movie rather well. And it was great to kind of go back home again and to have Dee Dee play the role that Joan Blondell played, and Carly Rae playing Frenchie, and having them have that scene. I mean, it was just delightful.
Tom McHale, he directed Hamlet, I believe, right?
Hamilton.
Yeah.
Hamilton, yes.
Hamilton. Sorry. Yeah.
I think it was one of the better musicals, live ones that I've seen them do.
Oh my goodness. And also Barry, I mean, it was crazy because it was live. I remember, because I also done some theater, like I was getting the same adrenaline just watching it live that you get, you know, when you're putting on a show in a theater house. And so that must have been very...
It was great. It was really, really great. I do remember, and I played the producer and of the show, The National Bandstand, and I was supposed to be guiding Mario Lopez around to show him who to tap out, and I wasn't part of rehearsals where that was all put together. So I was flying by the seat of my pants. Mario was more like leading me than I was leading him. It was really, how am I going to do this? I don't know who is who and where is he, but we got through it. It was just fun.
It came out really well. We enjoyed that very, very much.
Yeah, they did a great job.
Being one of the original cast members from the film, and also doing it on stage, were you treated like royalty?
Oh yes, absolutely. We were. Yes, they really did. And right from the beginning, Tommy was so lovely to us when we auditioned. And I mean, he's a guy that I revere, you know.
He's a nice guy too.
He was a very nice guy.
Yeah.
And just everybody associated with it, the cast, the crew, Seth Radinsky, who was the technical supervisor, I guess, or also edited. He made that car chase look like it was a real chase when all they were doing was moving the car forward and back. Forward.
I remember.
It was astounding, the magic that they created. Yeah, Seth Radinsky.
So I just want to jump off the Grease train for a moment.
Beg your pardon, Alex Radinsky. You might have to edit that out.
No. We're human. We can do that. I want to ask you about some other shows that you appeared on. Barney Miller, you did a classic sitcom. You worked with Hal Linden. What was your memories with that? Who did you play in Barney Miller?
Mario Pellegrini. Was a fur thief, and I wind up stealing fake furs by accident, and I get nabbed for selling fake furs. What was interesting about that was another great cat, and that was Danny Arnold, and he had that down to a science. You know, that was the first 4 cameras set up, and they would like edit in the camera, and it was amazing. And working with Hal Linden. What was interesting was in going back to 1962 when I was doing Birdie in Vegas, Flower Drum Song was there with Jack Sue starring in Flower Drum Song. And when I got the Barney Miller, I thought this is going to be neat. I'll be able to work with Jack Sue, who I kind of idolized from when I was 12 years old. Well, the first day of rehearsal, he had gone into the hospital with esophageal cancer. So I didn't get to work with him. The day that episode aired, he passed away.
Oh, wow.
Can you believe that?
Oh,
I got to work with Scanlon Gale and Ron Glass and of course Hal. And years later, I was a member of the Actors Alley Repertory Theater, and Hal's daughter Nora was a member of that theater. So I got to direct her, actually teach her improv. So we worked together, became friends. And not too long ago, the Actors Fund, the Actors Equity Fund, would do benefits for the fund. And they did one, which in fact, the theme of which was how Jewish people were responsible for forming the theater, the musical theater. You know, and you know, the Goldwyns, the Mayers, and as far as film goes. And I was asked to play Tevye in just to open up the evening to sing tradition. And then we'd go into all the Jewish people that became stars and said, well, the evening consisted of people, not only myself, but Hal was in it, and Peter Marshall was in it. And Peter was doing, forget what song that he did, but Hal did a number from the Rothschilds, which he was in. That whole experience, we did it inside the lobby of the Pantages Theater. They turned it into a theater. It's a stunning lobby if you've ever been in it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And they would, the way it was constructed, the women's lounge became the men's dressing room, and the men's lounge was the women's dressing room. So for the better part of that evening, Hal and Peter and I just hung out in the women's lounge, just sharing stories back and forth.
Oh, incredible.
It was
That's
just
great.
so, I mean, that kind of thing happening, talking about coming home and those worlds colliding. You can't buy something like that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Another one that you are on, which always did such a great job of bringing back like classic actors, was Murder, She Wrote with Angela Lansbury. How was that with working with her?
Well, I didn't work with her. I worked with Gail Strickland and Yaphet Kotto.
Oh, Yaphet Kotto's great.
Yeah. In fact, I just watched that recently. I'm putting together my new demo reel, which is like a video resume for people who don't know what that is. And I came across that clip, and we did it in this really small office. Everything was very tight, and Yaphet Kotto was a little undone because it was in such close quarters, and he was botching his lines at first, but then that's what I majorly remember. In fact, I remember I was a big fan of his. And I don't ask for autographs usually from people when I'm working. I like to just kind of get into a relationship. And he got a little upset with me for asking him so many questions. Oh God, don't blow my image of you, you know. So.
Another one, my favorite Martian. I mean, look at this cast that Christopher Lloyd, Jeff Daniels, Elizabeth Hurley, Darren Hannah, and even Ray Walston was in the original.
The scene took place, I was in the TV booth. I was the engineer, the booth director. And Jeff Daniels is behind the news desk, and that is when he's turning back into the Martian. And so the only person I didn't work with Jeff was on the other side, but I worked with Michael, basically. And that was directed by my friend Don Petrie. I've done a couple of things with Don, and so once again, it wasn't unfortunately working with all of those greats. So there's not much more to tell than that, you know.
Yeah. Did you do one of the most famous kid shows ever, Barney?
I mean, I don't go anywhere without my Barney doll, actually. Tell you that.
Wow, you certainly did do that show. Wow.
I have.
Hello! My name's Professor Tinkerpot. You may think it's funny, but I like it very much.
And in it was this eccentric toy inventor by the name of Professor Erasmus Q. Tinkerpot, who lives on an island by himself and who has turned his plane that he crash landed into all kinds of toys. And Barney and his and friends are on a ship, and a big wave takes them onto the island, and the ship lands in the trees. And now they don't know how to get off the island. So they see this shack in which Professor Tinkerpot resides, and Professor has all these toys, but he doesn't want anybody touching his toys because they belong to him. And he didn't share his toys with anybody. And one of the kids helps the professor fix a balloon machine that he has by taking her little heart locket and sticking it into the machine so it helped the gears move. And in so doing, the professor is taken by her ability to share. And so the professor learns that sharing is a good thing. So what he does is he blows up all these balloons, attaches them to the ship, and that takes the ship off the trees. The themes, the ethics, I love you, you love me, which is really for the kids, teaching them, great behavior and such. Because the adults were always, oh, Barney, I can't say it. It's not about them. It's about the kids.
Yeah.
So that was an amazing time. all the way around.
Speaking of shows, there are two shows that we do want to ask about. So you were in a couple of stage productions. One was the Happy Days musical, which Gary Marshall was involved in. Paul Williams. We've had Paul on, and I was like awestruck.
Yeah, and Gary, of course, who wrote the book, they were always present. Paul had written the music, and which I thought was wonderful. I thought the music was really, really good. The piece itself just bombed in every city we went to. Just terrible reviews all over, and it was really unfortunate. The story was basically about they brought the Pinky Tuscadero character in, and it was mainly about her relationship with the Fonz, more focused there than on
characters
Richie. And it was about a boxing match with the Malachi brothers and that conflict. And so I think in one way that was a bit of a disappointment to people, but I thought the music was great. Paul did a great job. And it was a wild tour, to say the least.
I want to ask about, you were on the series last year, Netflix, There's Nobody Wants This. So what was your experience of that show?
Got to work with Kristen Bell and Adam Brody and Laurie Allen. Tova Felcher was on the set. Paul Ben Victor was on the set. And got to hang with Tova kind of kept to herself, but got to hang with the rest of them. It was great fun. And it's so funny because so many people, it was a very short piece. It's only about 7 seconds when you think about it. I mean, it wasn't that much, 10 seconds. And so many people came out of the woodwork to tell me that they'd seen it. It's because the series itself is so wonderful and everybody has watched this thing. And I had turned up on the second episode. So that's the only reason why people have reached out to me. You know?
Oh, it was one of them. When I saw you on screen, I said, like, hey!
There's duty.
So, all right. So circling back to Grease, the film came out nearly 50 years ago. I told you before we started recording this, my kids were born 25 years after it came out, and they still love it. So to what do you attribute its enduring popularity?
The essence of the film, I contend, is camaraderie. That we see all of these people like the Rockettes kicking at the same time. We're all part of this machine, you know, where we're all working together and we're all pretty much getting along up there. And I think that people enjoy seeing the camaraderie. They enjoy seeing this group of disparate kids kind of getting along. And we sing about it. We go together. You know, that's the last number of the tune. Well, yeah, that's the last number in the movie. Yeah. And look, the music is hummable, is singable. You love watching John and Olivia, as I mentioned before. You love the dancing. You love the characters. You know, I think we all come across rather honest. It does remind us of those days when we all went to school. Boy meets girl, boy loses girl, boy gets girl, all of those elements. But I think at the core of it all, they see this group of people enjoying each other. I think that has kept it alive all these years.
It's great chemistry. And it came across. It all worked. When the Pink Ladies were at the beginning of the film, and they're like, this year we're gonna rule the school, and the music starts and he goes in, get the same chills every time. I mean,
that's exactly it.
Are you aware of any discussions for them to do anything for the 50th anniversary?
I just spoke with Dee Dee a week or so ago that it's about now that we're starting to get on top of doing something and making a proposal to the powers that be, because I just came to learn that by the time it's the 50th, Paramount will no longer own it. It'll go to Disney.
Right.
And so whether Disney wants to play cards with this or not, don't know. But we have some ideas as to what we'd like to do. So we're in the process of formulating those ideas and making some kind of presentation. I suppose something will be done.
You're in so many things. What can we look forward to seeing you do next?
That's a very good question. At this time, there is a movie that I shot called Rock and Doris Try to Write a Movie. It starred Mary Lou Henner, Joe Regalbuto, Jim Beaver, Andy Parks, me, Saratoga Ballantyne, Stan Taffel. Who else is in it? gosh, who else? Marie Toronto. The problem is that our dear friend who wrote, directed, and produced, Michael Schlesinger, just passed away.
Oh.
In fact, we just went to a life celebration where they showed his favorite film on big screen, which I hadn't seen since I was a kid. It's a mad, 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 mad world.
Oh,
Mhm.
love that movie.
My goodness, how many comedians and comedians are, I mean, it was a who's who, that film. So at this point in time, the piece is in flux until, probate and rights are gotten, et cetera, because it still needs tweaking. But that would be the next thing at this point up. And I'm looking for some directing work. I've got a couple of projects that I'd like to see get off the ground. So that's what's happening, at the moment with me specifically.
Yeah. Saratoga Ballantyne is the daughter of Carl Ballantyne.
That's correct.
Great.
That's correct. Sarah Ballantyne is Carl Ballantyne's daughter. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And how can people follow you on social media? And I know you do Cameo as well, correct?
I'm on Cameo and Instagram. I think it's Barry_LA_Pearl.
Thank you. I mean, you've been so gracious with your time. Absolutely. Thank you.
Pleasure.
Yeah.
My
What
pleasure. It was
a
an honor to be part of.
astounding life and career that you still live and that you've had. And thank you for sharing all that with us. You're a good guy, Barry.
Thank you, Moosie.
Yeah.
I would say the same about the two of you. I mean, the little contact I've had with you, Jonathan, you've impressed me as a good guy, and Moosie, you're definitely a good guy. So thanks for having me on, folks. I appreciate
I'm going to record that and show that to my daughter later on.
Great.
All right. So he's going to sign us off and be official about it.
Okay. Very good.
Pop Culture Retro. I'm Jonathan Rosen, and again with Moosie Drier. And a very special thanks to Barry Pearl. And please like, comment, and subscribe.
Thank you for tuning in to Pop Culture Retro, where no one was hurt during the making of this podcast. Listening to this podcast just makes you really cool.